mean, I could probably use it. They finally had the tubs. They haven't had it for weeks. We haven't been watching it because we don't want to hear all the negative stuff, but they were talking about the shortage of, stuff in the stores and all that and why. And you should see the container ships.
I saw that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that. I was kind of like in and out, but I saw
Out in the harbors.
Yeah.
And then all the containers on those docks.
Yeah, on the docks.
And they can't get rid of the empty ones, so they can't bring any new ones out.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then the guy had his little warehouse that was full, and he said, my warehouse is full.
Yeah, empty, yeah. Andy,
Hello.
two meetings in a row. they must have gone in now because the people were no, because they started over there, so they just keep.
Okay. All right. Thank you, folks, for joining us for the workshop of November 15th, 2021. We just exited executive session pursuant to a legal consultation, 1 MRSA, Section 405. We're not going to move on to the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA. As you know, we've had the Mayor's Ad Hoc Committee has been meeting regularly and talking about different projects along with staff. I'm going to let the manager here just kind of go through the prioritization that we've come up with so far. And I will say that this is a moving target, and council wanted this. We need this with council. So you can just get eyes on and see if there's anything that needs to be addressed before this session or term ends, which the last meeting is December 6th. So with that, I'll turn it over to Bill.
Thank you, Mayor. So what I have on the screen for you is, first, as a reminder, what we have for approved projects. That'll be the Sustainable Auburn Energy Efficiency Maine, which was $250,000, and the creation of the Capital Investment Purchasing Department, which is $175,000, which is part of administrating all these projects. The committee worked on creating a list of breaking it into 2 tiers, so that there's tier 1 projects that you'll see here. These are ones where either higher priority, shovel-ready items, projects that are already in CIP, or initiatives that we've been already moving forward with. That's what you're going to see in this tier 1 list. The committee did speak at the last meeting about moving forward with two projects for the December, I'm sorry, this says December 3rd, but it should say December 6th meeting. And that is the premium pay for first responders. I would say that HR has been running the numbers based off from the staff count. One thing we had to do is go back and take a look at the employees that were employed at the time of the emergency order, how many are still here with us. This premium pay will only go to employees that are currently hired within the city. So we do have an adjustment to that. It'll be slightly higher than the 175, but that's in that area. And that's if we were to move forward and the council would, the committee is recommending that it's $1,500 per employee. And that comes from, we did take a look at this pay, what other municipalities are doing, trying to get a fair number that we believe would be, a decent amount if you were to move forward with that recommendation. I think if you were to look at couple things that looking at is what is military pay for hazard duty pay. I think if you were to look at military pay, it's $150 a month. And so if you were to look at those 12 months, you're at $1,800. With the $1,500 recommendation plus the $300 from the state, that puts us right at $1,800. And now you have some other communities, the county for one, that have many less staff than we have, and received over $20 million in ARPA funds. They have allocated $5,000 to all employees. And so, so that's a much higher number, one of the higher numbers that we've seen. You still have some communities that have chosen not to do any premium pay. And some of those are larger communities as well. So there really is, it runs a variance between every community on what the decision is. But this puts you at an amount that's pretty similar to Lewiston, but in some cases it's actually higher because Lewiston went, they approved 4 extra days of pay for their fire and police personnel. So the 4 extra days of pay, depending on what your rate is, if you're an incoming firefighter or a police officer, that's going to be a lot less, probably going to be about half of that amount than what we're recommending. But if you're at the higher end, you'll be making a little less because your 4 days of pay will be slightly higher than $1,500. So that's where we're at on that. That's the committee had discussions on this to move forward, and if we were to move forward, this would be the recommendation. It'll be up to the council to make any adjustments during the meeting. Library Ave, this is a project that is ready. We have to move forward with this. This was part of funding that we received through HUD that we paid for the plans. We paid to move forward on this. If we choose not to move forward, which we can, we just have to pay HUD back the money that we used to move forward with this, for this project. So that's kind of where we are on the Library Ave project. It is one that has been a priority. We've been talking about it. We've been implementing some small pieces of it, but to really move forward with the Library Ave, and again, for council's benefit, this is basically everything from Hampshire Street was already redone, but it's from Hampshire Street over to Court Street, the small streets in between there around the library. It's those streets. And I think it also carries down to what you would connect with Turner Street. So minus Hampshire Street, that was already done, but all the side streets from Union Street bypass down to Turner Street and across to Court Street. So those streets in there. So those are those two projects. That's putting it about an additional $1.5 million that the committee is ready to move forward and have the council consider at the December 6th meeting. The other projects are ones that, again, have had a great deal of conversation, either by the committee or projects that we've been reviewing. The mayor had recommended the Build Auburn Better for Small Businesses project for the workforce development. That's had a lot of conversation at the committee. That's still being worked through and discussed. The PAL Center is a project that's been underway. We've had some conversations with a private investor regarding the PAL Center, trying to work with the city on making improvements there. The PAL Center certainly does fall under COVID. If you recall, the PAL Center had to shut down during COVID because of the limited space within that facility. They weren't able to hold any after-school operations there. Basically, everything moved remote for them as well, and they just opened up, Rita, 2-3 weeks ago, probably. Well, we just closed down again, rather.
We closed down for
Yeah. So, so it's been because of the size of the square footage of that building. But this would provide a great need in that community. Festival Plaza, we've already had a lot of conversations on Festival Plaza. Also making the Tier 1 project was the Trot Lot. The study only, if you recall, the rec committee presented before the council at a recent meeting regarding the Trot Lot, what could potentially happen there. And so this would be the study to move forward with that. Municipal Beach would be the study only. This is to see exactly what it would take to make the water available for use at the Municipal Beach. HVAC, these are priority projects within the city. These are projects that are already in the CIP 5-year plan. These are projects that are eligible under ARPA, but could offset your capital improvement costs, which means you could allocate those dollars that you have either in this current budget or in future CIP to other projects that do not have the same restrictions as ARPA. So that is allowable, and you can move forward with that. CLT is part of the bigger picture of the HVAC. If you look at the full HVAC plan, it's about $4 million. So, and CLT has been part of those discussions as well. Mechanics Row, this is a project that for a few years has been kicked around regarding making Mechanics Row a two-way street, which would then allow for more use of Main Street for events, activities, and just change the way access is coming across from Turner Street, across Court Street, down to Mechanics Row. Cybersecurity, and we're going to have I'm gonna pause on cybersecurity and I would add, we have two presentations tonight, one on cybersecurity, one on Museum LA. So we'll go ahead and move to cybersecurity right now. Brian and Jill, if you want to cover that. I think that this project is, Brian, probably just a partial of the 1.8, correct?
Yes. Yeah, so just a brief overview. This is a partial of the 1.8. I think the other piece, you heard another piece of that last week with the dark fiber. This is an opportunity for us to really look at our asset management across the city. As you are well aware, investments have been made, whether that's in our playgrounds, and over the years, I'm sure you've heard Derek and others come before you with a number of investments in our facilities that need to be done, upgrades. If you go back to a time pre-Derek, a lot of our facilities really didn't have an intentional management and maintenance plan. They were kind of fixing things as needed and rather than being proactive. A case in point, if we look at the 911 call center where they're currently located, you remember a major renovation and structure shoring up effort because there were large chunks of concrete falling into the ceiling, and eventually one came through. That's just an example of the preventative maintenance that we are really looking to be a lot more intentional about. And as we look at a number of major initiatives and efforts coming over the next several years, we really want to make sure that we have a good grip and are able to make sure that councils, current and future, are able to make reasonable and educated assessments based off of good data and information. Another piece that we are really looking to fold into this effort, and that I think is going to be critical as a city that's focused on sports tourism, is looking at our outdoor parks and facilities as major assets. I think another example of the need for this is our playgrounds recently underwent an assessment, and I think almost all of them received a score of F or lower. It was just ranking those, which I think was the need, precipitated the need in the investment of $1.3 million by this council. The reason we did not know that, and the reason we didn't have that a maintenance plan around those, is because we didn't have any of this information located in a single database. And I can let Jill speak a little bit more about the particulars, but overall, the last several months we have undergone an assessment and looking at different platforms and applications that would do a number of these efforts for us.
Sure. Yeah, so we got all the departments in the city together to review a couple of vendors. We have one department currently using an asset management software. We were looking to expand on it and see if they had the capabilities to handle all of the playground equipment and facilities and make sure we can actually manage all of our assets here. So, and then we looked at 3 other options. One of them was an expansion of the facilities energy solution that we're currently using. They import all of the data in now, and we're able to manage that and see how all of the buildings' energy solutions are working for us. So with all of that, with all of the meetings and software demos, we did find one solution that would give us the capabilities to move forward and manage all of our assets in a really clean, efficient way for each city. We're looking for something citywide, department-wide, that everyone could use easily. It is actually the solution the school is using, same software company, so we're hopefully going to be able to work with them and see if we can get some of the school buildings on board in the future and collaborate with them. And they've had really good success with support, which we haven't had with our current software solution. So that's something that we need to make sure staff can get supported through all of this and be able to manage and implement it easily.
And so the only other thing I'll say about this is that not only does it handle our vertical assets, it does handle our horizontal assets as well, but also from the public works side, the public works team would be remiss if I didn't share. This does also provide a great deal of flexibility for them, whether it's looking at, I think one of the things we often talk about is, well, how much does this particular project cost the city? What's our ROI? This allows us to really import real-time information around salaries, around time, so we can really get a true cost of what some of these projects that we're working on throughout the years does cost. It also has, I think, a more intuitive work order management system integrated with it. So there's that ability for residents to engage and for us to engage with them, but also for us to be a little bit more efficient from a technological standpoint about making sure that as we're making these or addressing these work orders, that it has the mobility, whether it's on a tablet or a phone, to input that information in real time. So there are a number of different benefits, and I mean, even some of the things that are as seemingly simple as an information manual, so that when we're working on different vehicles, we're able to easily and quickly pull up the work history of that vehicle on a tablet. That's something that's a little bit more laborious for us right now. That's something that this asset management system would put at the fingertips for a lot of our mechanics. So I could go into all of the different variations and the hours that staff kind of sat through and asked these types of questions. But I think the overall idea is that with potential public safety building, with potential revamp of Engine 2 and Engine 5, with potential PAL, with Festival, with all of these major investments, we want to make sure that we're able to take care of them from 3, 5, and 20 years out.
Areas that the city has maybe not done a great job in over the years is a lot of times receiving free money, right? We get that term, well, it's free money. It's just, let's implement this project, do whatever it is. If we're not implementing that into a system to determine what is our future cost for maintenance of that, what it's driving, those driving numbers, that's where our budget drivers come in at. And so those are things that we have to be better at. This system will allow us to be able to do that. It is an allowable expense under ARPA. And so there is a great demonstration of why that's beneficial for the community. And it's certainly beneficial for staff as we move forward, because we end up costing the city a great deal more money when we neglect the maintenance of either equipment or buildings that we have and put it off. And if we had something that was giving us a regular report, something that was brought before you, you're able to see our assets, see what the costs are, then that's being better stewards of the funding that we're receiving.
Can you just top line, just so I want to make sure we're all get a little bit of clarity here. Just a couple, when do you need a decision made by? When is this, what's critical on this? I see that it's potential.
We're gonna recommend this comes back before you on December 6th, but it's a different amount. What is the amount?
Yes, sorry, the total amount for this particular project was approximately $180,000
For asset management software.
for the software and support in implementing all of this and collecting all of this data and putting it into.
No.
No. The annual cost is $26,000.
Same as, in that, it's the same as our current software. So as far as software pricing, the new software vendor compared to what we're paying is the exact same. So budget long-term wouldn't change, except for the standard.
It's just the upfront cost. Okay, so
Yeah.
right now where I'm seeing cybersecurity, I just want to eliminate some variables here. We got 1.8 million for cybersecurity.
More's coming later on that. That's part of our fiber extension.
The dark web.
So yeah,
Okay.
there's more of this, well, not dark web, but, so
Not, that's the bad one.
that's.
Yeah, that's the bad
Dark
one.
fiber. There you
Dark
go.
fiber.
One into dark web.
Saying.
So, but more's coming on that, but this project is one that staff has already worked through. This one's up and ready to go, and we can go ahead and execute, which then allows us to be able to move quicker on this project. The other, yep, go ahead.
Sure, excuse me, I'm sorry. I just want to make sure that we have a little bit more, now that we're getting data points, let's just make sure that we explain this a little bit easier for the next time the committee to meet versus a catch-all. Let's look at this project in groups, if you would.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right,
Yeah.
thank you.
The next one, and I'm going to ask Museum LA to come up. So this is one that was on the original list as we were talking. We did meet with Museum LA, the mayor, myself, and Brian, and met with Museum LA regarding funding. I think the mayor had introduced this originally. Then we thought that any ARPA funding could hamper them from receiving other funding, so that came off at the committee level. We stopped talking about it, if you recall, those that are on the committee. However, things have changed, and now we can go ahead and move forward with that. And so we've asked them to come, and they've had a nice presentation for you, council. Kind of see, and this is a great update as well on the follow-up. Rachel DeGrosius here. So Rachel had given a presentation. Rachel, how long ago was that presentation? Yeah, so this is a good follow-up and an update for you on that. Oh, you're good to go. So.
Thank you. Thanks for having us here. I'm Rachel Ferrante. I'm the new Executive Director of Museum LA. This is Tracy Gear. She's our new Director of Development. I began at Museum LA in September. I went to Bates College, and I've spent the past decade working at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. I moved back here to raise my family, and I took on this role specifically to create this new museum because of what I believe it can do for this region. So tonight, we want to walk you through Tonight I want to walk you through three things. First, how museums in general are economic engines. Then how this new museum is an integral part of Auburn's strategic plan. And then lastly, show you how we're going to achieve our capital campaign goal. So a couple of things for the record here. This new museum, we believe, will be an icon of regional industry and heritage. For those of you that aren't aware, the space that we're currently in the Bates Mill is temporary, and a situation that was once problematic is now urgent. The mill, in case you haven't been recently, is being beautifully redeveloped, and we must make the new museum a reality in order for us to have a permanent home. So the new building, as we've developed it with Tom Platts, is in the former Camden Yarns Mill, which the museum already owns. We envision it being approximately 32,000 square feet of space, which will include a permanent exhibition, as well as temporary gallery spaces, event and education spaces, climate-controlled storage, a restaurant and administrative offices. Ultimately, we believe that the new museum will present unique treasures and stories of the region in a fitting, visually impactful, high-quality setting. I say new museum here rather than Museum LA because part of this effort is also going to be a rebranding that creates the museum as a destination and a cultural landmark for the region. Part of that rebranding will include a name change, a new brand identity, and brand engagement that will broaden the museum's appeal and speak to diverse audiences. The last thing I want to note before we get into this is that we really do I specifically view the cities of Lewiston and Auburn as my partners, our partners, and teammates in this. To demonstrate that I'm serious about that, the mayors of Lewiston and Auburn have been asked to serve on the museum board beginning in January of 2022. And we know that it can be done because we have evidence of it, evidence of the galvanizing effect of heritage museums have on their communities across the country and around the world. First, the Mill City Museum captures those twin cities' shared heritage with a forceful play on emergence from industry decline. The Heinz History Center in Pittsburgh effectively explores industrial and cultural heritage and how the two intertwine. And the Museum of Industrial Heritage in Italy demonstrates the silk-making heritage of that area. And so now we want to tell you a little bit how museums are true economic engines and how this one will be for the region.
Thanks, Rachel. Yeah, there has been a lot of research done about the impact of museums in regional economics, and you can group those impacts into three areas. The first is the direct impact of museum jobs and expenditures. The second is the tourism impacts that they bring, and the third is the business impacts. So when we look first at the impact of the museum jobs and expenditures, so this is really looking at the museum operations and the operation that will be created in the new museum in the new site, and also the other operating budget expenditures that the museum will undertake in the community. All of that spending, the research has shown in a study that was done by Oxford Economics, there's a 3.2 multiplier on those museum expenditures in the broader community and region. And every direct job in the museum will support one additional job in the economy. And when you look at the tax impacts, they return more than $5 in tax revenue for every dollar that they receive. So in Maine, as we know, that is, we're looking at the impacts of the museum, that growth in tax revenue will definitely happen in the state level and will come back to municipalities in the revenue sharing system. The second area is the tourism impacts, and this is where going from the strength that Museum LA has built over the course of its tenure and the recognition that it has, and taking that to the next level will dramatically increase the tourism impacts there. 76% of U.S. leisure travelers participate in cultural or heritage activities like visiting museums when they travel. They spend 60% more on average than other types of tourists. And museums have been shown to be able to spur tourism in new areas. So when we look specifically at Maine tourism, and this is drawing data from the Maine Office of Tourism reports that are done every year, the great thing that we see about tourism is that it bounced back actually in 2021, almost to from 2019 levels, almost to those 2019 levels. And we really see the new museum, the impacts of that when we implement a destination marketing program for the museum. We'll be able to pull from the 9 million folks that visit in all of the neighboring regions here from the Houston Auburn area. So there's a lot of potential there. And having this icon and heritage tourism, there will be a great draw. And then thirdly, the business impacts. There is a lot of research to show about how businesses consider museums when they're thinking about places to locate. Bloomberg Businessweek and Money Magazine use the concentration of museums as one of the factors in their calculation of the best cities and the best places to live, respectively. And increasing the density of museums has been shown to attract new folks both to live and to work. So there's a lot of upside in terms of economic development plans for Auburn, and it's an exciting time to be looking at the museum in that context.
So a bit about how the new museum ties into Auburn's strategic plan. Auburn's plan will develop a clear identity for the downtown. The new museum associates the region with an iconic cultural institution and a distinctive building, and connects the riverfront venues and facilities. Auburn's strategic plan says, you guys probably know this better than I do, but attract quality businesses to create good employment opportunities. The new museum then appeals directly to businesses seeking to locate in places with strong cultural assets, as Tracy just mentioned. And lastly, the value of historic, cultural, and artistic assets, or as it says up there on the strategic plan, final recommendations invest in arts, history, and culture. And of course, the new museum is doing just that. And it would also, of course, extend Auburn's relationship with the museum and the collaboration that the museum has with the Androscoggin Historical Society to assure that our assets are preserved and featured to tell the stories of the region. So we do believe that the museum is an economic and downtown win for Auburn, and the return on investment for the region is strong. The new museum will link directly to Auburn downtown assets, Laurel Avenue, Moulton Park, Community Little Theater. We've invested $1.5 million to date in environmental cleanup and stabilization on our permanent site. We estimate that the construction and materials for the new museum will cost approximately $14 million, and based on current plans for that construction and operations of the museum, the construction phase would employ local contractors and workers, creating jobs in the region, and the operations phase would include a destination marketing strategy, as Tracy mentioned, and there would be regional impacts for events and ongoing community engagement. we estimate approximately $1.3 million in direct impact on the region from operations annually, and then of course additional indirect tourism and business impacts. So with that in place, the time is now and we're ready. The building has been acquired. Our architectural plans are in place, which Tom can speak to further, but has been a great partner to the museum. Now's the time to move forward. We need to raise the money. We're sharing that load across government, institutional, and private sources, and we hope that we can count on your support. As I mentioned, Tom's here and has been a great friend and supporter to the museum, working closely with us on all architectural and construction plans and related costs and schedule.
Yeah, I just think I want to say I feel like the Twin Cities right now are at a real crossroads. I mean, we've got tremendous opportunity with all these mills being developed, with both cities embracing the sculpture trail. I think if you look around the state, the cities that really draw tourism, they all have a museum. They all have something that draws people to culture. And this is the first time, I think, that I can remember that we've had the opportunity to do something like that. We have some additional pictures up here. I don't know if everybody's seen kind of what the potential stuff that is going to happen, but this museum's going to have things like classrooms. So it'll actually add to what kids in school can do. They can go over there and take courses, or I don't know, maybe Rachel will send people into the schools to help with culture. But I think, as I said, any city that really kind of takes that next step, where we've got millions of people coming into Maine every summer, I think with the sculpture trail and encouraging national artists to participate, with a first-class museum where you can have all types of cultural events, you could have major openings of artists if you want. I mean, there's nothing they can't do in this museum. You'll have people going up the turnpike now who actually may be on their way to Bangor, who will say, we got to get off in Lewiston and spend the night in Auburn, Lewiston, to spend the night. And that's what we need to do. And I don't know of any other way that you're really going to draw people off. We can bring businesses in. We can, we could bring 15 new businesses in, but nobody's going to get off the turnpike to come visit them. Whereas this is something that just really grabs people. And I think as we create the sculpture trail, which you've all bought into and done a great job funding that, you can actually start at the museum and just do a huge loop and immerse yourself in a culture that we've never had before. And culture equals tourism, it really does. Happy to answer any questions about the construction of the building.
Question about the finances. When I saw the different supporters, how much is Lewiston putting into this pot of money?
That I don't know.
So we're making asks of Lewiston, Auburn, Androscoggin County, the state, the federal level, major foundations, individuals. Across the two cities and the county, we're making similar significant asks.
So,
$100.5 million you're going to try to get out of Lewiston and the county?
I'm sorry, 1.5 mil.
Yeah.
1.5 is our ask of Auburn, yeah.
it's and then if just do a little inference here, 4.5 million with other local governments according to your spreadsheet. So I take it you're thinking about a proportional response based upon population or some other key performance metric, county, city of Lewiston, what other local, and then you have state, federal and state at additional 3?
Yep.
Okay. So it's proportional.
Yep.
Okay. I know Tom likes to use the word twin, but there's no such thing. We're not twin cities.
Right,
So,
right.
Okay, got it.
And then you also talk about revenue sharing. Does that mean the money that the city of Lewiston is getting from the state through their revenue sharing? Or is this the revenue sharing that we have through our joint agencies that we have partnered with Lewiston to do? And there's certain monies each side will get.
Hold on. One question at a time, please.
Yes.
Revenue sharing, I don't think is through the definition. Revenue sharing, you're just talking about overall
Correct.
revenue that comes into the community?
Correct. So
versus,
in
tickets?
speaking about tourism specifically, as Tom mentioned,
Right.
we've got in Lewiston, Auburn, passing by
Right.
9 million tourists a year. I excluded from that analysis the 3 million that just come and kind of hang out at the beach. These are people that drive to Acadia, they drive to Mount Blue, they drive to Moosehead. They're driving past Lewiston and Auburn, and they are looking for a place and a reason to stop. those folks, on average, if they stay overnight somewhere, they spend $785 a day. So if we can lure them in via cultural tourism to stop in the Lewiston Auburn area, they're going to be looking for a hotel. They're going to be looking to eat. They're going to be looking to take their kids maybe to one of the parks that you've been talking about. They're going to be spending time here and therefore spending their money. So that revenue will come directly to Lewiston Auburn businesses, right? So as they're running around. Then there's also an overall increase in the sales tax that is being generated. As we know in Maine, that goes to the state, and then that's paid back to the municipalities through revenue sharing. So that was my reference to revenue sharing. I think the immediate benefit, though, is the real increase in revenues to businesses that will happen as a result of the museum being here, giving people a reason to stop in this area.
Thank you.
Councilor Carey?
Just in general, I was looking at the designs and everything, and I'm fully on board with all of this. My only concern is this site and this building going to give you the space you need? Because I've read old documentations of what they used to call this area, which was the armpit of the state of Maine, which I think is very derogatory, but I think they overlook just the many, many businesses and corporations and everything else there. So is this space going to be big enough that you can showcase all of that? Because what I'm thinking of right now is exhibits and machinery and hands-on for the kids, and is this going to give you the space that you need?
Yeah, so this has all of that. So this has a permanent exhibition space where we would tell the story of the heart of the museum LA's, or the new museum's collection. It also has a space, a temporary exhibition space, where we would be able to rotate the stories that we're telling, keeping the stories very fresh and current. As Tom mentioned, there are classrooms designated here, which we don't have currently. There's a full restaurant to be laid out, a cafe and a restaurant, which again, we don't have, and I think is another potential draw for people and to come to the museum specifically. So, and then it's got a whole area laid out for us to also have storage, collection storage. And my idea for that is to try and do some of that as open storage so that visitors would be able to see the collection even when it's not technically on view. But the museum has a lot that right now there calls for a small theater in there. There's a design lab, which has a number of different spaces and sort of facets it could take. So, some of the spaces are still in their infancy, but the core of the place, a place for people to gather, a restaurant, classrooms are critical, a real, true, large, permanent exhibition space, and temporary galleries, that's all in here, and 95% of that is not things that we have right now.
And the site also has almost an acre undeveloped. So.
Thank you. Yes, the other thing is really, events, particularly in the spring and summer months, that we could be doing on this property and also adjacent to the park, and then utilizing also the bridge to cross the river would be huge.
So we'll come back to that. Good?
Yeah.
Councilor Zani?
Thank you. One thing I really want to note, first of all, I think this is an incredibly important idea, as well as an incredibly fantastic idea. And one thing on the page, the new museum where you showed the walking sort of Simard Payne, what we are trying to do on Main Street in Auburn aligns perfectly with this. It does not take much to step off the trail that is going along the river to Main Street, where we are looking really to upgrade not only the look of the street, but the feel of it, the kind of people who are going to be spending time on this. And I think this fits perfectly into that. You talk about the sculpture trail, but just the trail on both sides of the river, this is a very natural kind of anchor point for that. I also appreciate that you're looking at spaces for people to gather. We do not have a lot of good large spaces for people to gather in this community, and to have a restaurant there as well. So I think this is fantastic.
Thanks. One thing I just want to note about the spaces for gathering, in my experience, having worked in museums, people that want to have events at museums want to be among the collection. And so one of the things we're going to be really intentional about is creating our gallery spaces such that they not only showcase the exhibits and the objects in the collection, but also allow for those events to happen right there in the galleries. That's true at museums across the country.
I can't I can't even remember how many convention parties sponsored by corporations from Discovery Channel to ABC was at the museum in San Diego, MoMA in New York, DC Natural History. I mean, the list goes on and on. It's like the thing to do. And it was just open bar, hors d'oeuvres, and you're looking at dinosaurs or whatever they had on the wall. After a certain point, you saw two of them. Couple quick questions. You're good? Okay. Anticipated time frame for a fundraising or the CAP campaign and then launch to build, construction, open?
This is it. We're launching the capital campaign. We're hoping that the cities of Auburn and Lewiston and Androscoggin County are going to help us with those first investments. We're planning to talk to our major individual donors in the coming months. My hope is that we would be able to break ground and begin construction a year from this spring. That is obviously, so the spring of 2023, with an idea of hopefully being in there in the spring or summer of 2024. That's obviously dependent on having the support that we need in order to do that.
Okay. From a structure, and just full disclosure, I've worked with Rachel on this now for 2 months, just back and forth concept, understanding, then Tracy, and then Phil and Brian, and trying to understand how this globally fits into the strategic plan. And Holly, you mentioned a lot of this with regards to anchor. And if the council remembers 2 years ago, we had that visioning exercise of what were our geographical, economic, and cultural anchor points within our downtown. This was not on the list, but it fits into the list. In other words, the connection between the museum, Bonnie Park, Moulton Park, Community Little Theater, our historic downtown. It's a natural kind of anchor. Newberry Street, Laurel Avenue, historic buildings on Maine. This really does fit well, and we probably should have thought about that 2 years ago when we were thinking about what our anchor points were. Throw that out there. So it fits everything. And one of the reasons I think it's important for us to talk about this now and come up with a conclusion relatively quickly is this will determine our next steps and how we smartly proceed with any type of ARPA or any other capital investments within Moulton, Bonnie Park, the Riverwalk, Main Street, Community Little Theater. It won't be in a vacuum now. It will be based upon how everything influences each other strategically and the interplay between pickleball courts at Bonnie Park, I'm making that up, by the way, and Museum LA. Okay, is there an interplay? Is there an interplay between Community Little Theater and the museum? There's collaboration that can go on between everything. So I think it's important for us to get it out of the way. Now, from a structural standpoint, I'd recommend to the council that we bring this up for debate and vote December 6th, because we have that legacy knowledge. But it also, I think, take time for the city manager and Rachel and her staff to work on an MOU between your board and the city where monies are committed, but yet held in escrow, or certain deliverables are met with appropriate, obviously leeway on construction or what have you, environmental permitting. But we want to make sure that we do not have money committed and then just sitting there in account for the next decade where it can be better used someplace else. So I think there's some trigger points here, and I think there's some safeguards for the city as well as the museum so they can go forth in good faith if this does pass, whatever that final amount might be based upon debate. Does that make sense? Phil?
So we're talking about ARPA funds, so there's requirements under ARPA funds, which means that the allocation would have to be done by 2024. It would have to be built by 2026. So there's no holding on to this funds at all. And that would be for Lewiston and the county as well. We're all under the same obligation when it comes to those dollars. Rita is our gatekeeper here of these funds, and so she was giving me that look, so I knew I need to weigh in on exactly what that looks like. So what we would do is we would actually be allocating money to a not-for-profit organization, which is allowable under ARPA. However, they have to follow the same rules and would have to report back to us on how those dollars are spent to ensure that it's meeting the ARPA requirements and part of our reporting process. So that's what we would do with that.
So this would have to be complete by 26.
Yeah, we wouldn't need an MOU because the MOU is what is mandated under federal government.
Got it. Okay.
I just want to add, though, if there are other contingencies or deliverables that would be helpful, or just even points that we agree to that Tracy and I come back and update the council regularly there are certain things we can work out in being, I think every sort of first or lead donor of every capital campaign wants those kinds of assurances. So the city of Auburn is no different in that. So we're happy to work with you all to figure out what that means.
Well, I think the communication is important too, by offering up a board seat to the mayors of Lewiston and Auburn who may take the seat themselves or have a city council representative. I mean, that's something to think about, add to the list of thinking about. That kind of ensures that consistent communication between the board and the council. I think that's going to be a big first step that didn't exist before, so that's going to help keep track of progress. Okay, is there any other questions while we have Rachel, Tom, and Tracy here? Anybody?
I don't have any questions,
Councilor
but I
Voss.
do have a comment. I just want to thank you for this. I think it's such a critical vision. It's such critical work, and it's so valuable beyond tourism and beyond revenue. I remember when I first moved to Auburn 8 years ago now, I landed on Lisbon Street in Lewiston, was working a job there, and I pulled up Google Maps and was just looking to see what was around. And one of the very first things that I did was I found Museum LA and I visited. And that was one of the critical things that tied me to this community and made me feel rooted. And I bought a house and have raised my family here. And I really do think that Museum LA was one of the important parts of that early history of my time here. So it's beyond revenue, it's beyond tourism, it's about bringing people here longer. So thank you.
Any other questions? I mean, we got all the subject matter experts here, so let's ask now. No? Okay, I think we're good. I think we're good.
Around, you know where to find us if you have further questions.
Yeah, we know. We'll track you down. Thank you very much, sincerely, for all your time and work on this. And again, I think Phil and Brian will be in touch and talk about the agenda on December 6th. Okay?
Thank you all.
Thank you all. We have one more thing under workshop. We want to go over our costs, and then I'm going to break before the meeting. That's okay?
Phil, can I ask one question about Library Avenue? How much HUD money would go back if we chose not to go forward with that?
Rita, do we have that number, the money that would go back to CDBG if we didn't move forward with Library Ave?
I believe it was close to that amount of money.
No, no, it's less.
It's
than that.
less?
It's less. I think it might be on that spreadsheet.
Okay, I'll look.
I don't need
check.
to write this, I'm just
We'll check.
curious.
Okay, so next on the agenda, we're going to be we are all good with ARPA at this point?
Yeah.
So we're going to move on to the next and last, which is this EMS fee changes. We've, Chief Chase has graced us with his presence.
Real brief on the EMS funding, and the chief is here to answer any questions you might have. But if you recall, this came before you originally, but it was so long ago, we thought it would be important to bring it back to you before it moved forward with a vote at the December 6th meeting, as just a refresher. But Chief, do you want to just give any highlights on that?
Yeah, so we did a full review of fire and EMS-related ordinances and applicability and if any changes needed to be made. So there's actually a couple of proposed changes. One is to the Fireworks Ordinance, and basically, on a high level, all it does is reinforce the need for a permit for fireworks. Again, consumer fireworks on the ponds and things, those still remain illegal in Auburn, but it's these commercial fireworks displays. They would get a permit from us, and that's basically a notification process, so we know what's going on. The state issues permits for the larger fireworks displays, A's and B's, but because of our close proximity, a lot of our fireworks vendors are doing Class C fireworks, and we want them to also be required to have a permit, so we know they're going to be going on, and we can do a site review. That's the quick change on fireworks.
If Auburn has it, that we have to notify Lewiston that we're going to be shooting fireworks or vice versa?
No, there's no notification requirement. It really just goes to where they're being launched from. And then that community is responsible for looking at the fallout area and based on the size of the shells and how much needs to be protected around it. So, for example, for New Year's Eve, it's Auburn's display, but they're launching from Lewiston. There's no permit required from us at that time. It goes to where the loadout and the launching occurs. Does that answer your question? Great. Another quick change is to the fire code section. And basically, there's an appeals section in it, but it never really called out how long any individual has to make an appeal of a fire code violation. And what we found is that often we go through months and months and months and months of trying to get enforcement, and then somebody wants to claim an appeals process. And so all we've added is a 10-day timing from the time they get notified of a violation for them to be able to file an appeal with us. Really just a clerical issue to keep the process moving. That didn't exist previously. So, and then this is a great place to be on the slide up here. This is the fees area. It basically calls out some definitions of how fees related to the fire service would be applied. A couple of things that we've done here in this section is there was a fee for demolition burns. It actually is not legal for us to do demolition burns at this point. We can't burn a building for the sake of just getting rid of it for somebody. However, we can do bona fide fire training, and that at times might result in the demolition of a building, but oftentimes it won't. So we really just changed that wording to reflect, to be more in compliance with state law, that we don't do demolition burns, but we do training burns, and there may be a fee associated with that if we incur costs. We removed oil and gas burner permits. That's a really ineffectual program. We haven't had a lot of takers on that, and since oil and gas burners are installed by licensed professionals and state has jurisdiction on them, it really didn't make any sense for us to be doing inspections on those. Further on into the detailed fees, which is actually Appendix A, we updated some of the rates that we would have for fees for some services that we would provide, such as providing reports. But these fees also talk to things like penalty fees for unauthorized burning and those types of things. And what I did when I looked at these is try to, for two reasons, try to establish it based on a cost basis. So there's a penalty plus the cost incurred by the department. So for example, an out-of-control burn, previously there was a set fee of a couple $100 if you had a woods fire and it got out of control. Well, that woods fire could go for us being there for 30 minutes to take care of it, or us being there for 4 days to take care of it. And when we want to potentially seek restitution for that illegal burn, we want to have a document to fall back on, like the fee schedule, to say, here are our costs incurred. So we structured a lot of our fees based on how long were our personnel there or how long were our apparatus there. And what that required is us to define a per hour apparatus cost. The other reason this is important, it's both for seeking restitution, but also for grants and things like that, to have a defined and adopted fee schedule for your apparatus really helps us in trying to recoup money in disasters and those types of things. So if we had a natural disaster and there was a disaster declaration and we had a lot of resources that were used, they're looking for what defined the rate at which you're submitting for reimbursement for these. So that really is one of the major changes in our fire fee schedule, is to say, hey, an apparatus costs, $250 an hour for an engine plus the manpower, and there's a fixed rate defined in that. So that was the real primary driver for adopting and changing the fee schedule. Any questions on those fire fees really quick? And then they're just briefly also submitted a change for consideration to the EMA ordinance if there are no questions on the fire fees.
I think we're good.
Okay. Just really quickly on the EMA ordinance. One of the changes there, as we reviewed basically all the relevant ordinances, was the EMA ordinance and in particular the proclamation of an emergency. The committee that met was myself and Chief Moen and our deputies with some feedback from the city manager's office. And what the primary change there is that to advocate for the proclamation of emergency to be able to be made by the manager or a designee with consultation with the council. And that pretty much is the language that continues all the way through. The only other language I added from my own history was a note in here that in the case of that emergency has been declared, if emergency purchases need to be made, which already existed in there, but that the emergency purchases don't have to strictly conform to the bidding process that exists outside of an emergency. We're sometimes finding both emergencies, but also in grant reimbursements that they ask, have you followed your purchasing policy? This gives us something in ordinance that says we're able to defer to an emergency situation. So that's for your consideration, if you'd like, and the details are in the packet.
Yeah, I think we need to look at that because there's conflict there with what you're writing up in that policy with the charter.
Okay.
with regards to whose responsibilities, delegated responsibilities and so forth, timing and scheduling. So I think we just need to have some conformity there. Fair enough?
Those are the
Yeah,
proposals.
we'll have legal take a look at it.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, you safely just eliminated the mayor from all those discussions.
What's that?
You just put city manager.
No, I'm bringing it
You
for.
eliminated the mayor.
No, I'm bringing it for you for all of your considerations.
Either or. In the emergency, it can be either the city manager or the mayor. Namely, you
Yeah.
get, you know,
Yep,
just conformity
yep,
for my feelings.
either way.
Perfect, thank you. That ends the workshop. We are, at this point, going to take a 5-minute break, reconvene for our normal city council meeting. Okay? Anyone please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you very much. First on the agenda tonight, sorry we're starting a little late. We had a longer than expected workshop, which we did not want to cut short because it was important. We're going to move on to consent items. Quite a few of them, primarily nominations. We have 13 of them. Do I have a motion to approve the consent items on tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Motion, Councilor Carrier, second from Councilor Walker. All those in favor of approving the consent items, please raise your hand. Passes vote 6-0. Minutes are the November 1st, 2021 regular city council meeting. Are there any corrections, omissions? None being, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the November 1st, 2021 regular city council meeting.
Motion to approve.
So second.
Motion, Councilor Walker, second from Councilor Carrier. All those in favor, show of hands, please. Passes, vote 6-0. Next, we have communications. First communication I'd like to talk about is Extra Mile. If you remember, council and members of the public, we have, every year it's kind of our privilege to recognize people who really go the extra mile in their community. This is a national effort. It's something that has been going on. I think there's over 500 cities in America right now that are participating in this, and we do this every year. This year it's a little bit different. We normally have an application process and pick one person. This year, the decision was a toss-up when we had to choose two, and I think they're two outstanding individuals. So I'd like to, if I could, read the nomination paperwork, the nominations rather, for the two recipients. First, Jolene Gerard. Jolene, where are you? Are you here? Oh, geez, right, Jolene's right there. So, is this a surprise, Jolene? Oh, you didn't know why you showed up here to city council meeting tonight? That actually makes a lot of sense. First of all, congratulations, Jolene. The fact that Sue could keep a secret is amazing. So let me embarrass you, Jolene. I'm not going to make you stand up right now. Yeah. I'm pleased to recognize Jolene Gerard as a recipient of the November 2021 Extra Mile Award. This is an award, I feel, and a lot of other people, including Sue, our city clerk, feel she is more than deserving of receiving. Jolene began working for the City of Auburn as deputy registrar in 1993 after retiring from DHHS from the state of Maine. She retired, bold and in quotes, from the city around 2006-07, but has graciously returned almost every year on a part-time basis to assist with elections. Jolene knows firsthand what goes into running a smooth election. She has seen changes in the election process and the implementation of new technology over the years. She was here when the state implemented the statewide central voter registration system in Maine, accessible ballot marking devices, no excuse absentee voting, same-day voter registration, to name just a few changes over the decades. That's pretty rough. You could have just said years, Sue. Decades. Elections can be complicated and challenging. It takes knowledge, experience, attention to detail, and strong commitment to the process, and Jolene possesses all those qualities. Her dedication and commitment to Auburn's elections are undeniable, and she has been known to state, I would have to be laid up in a hospital bed with an IV in my arm before I would even think of calling out during an election. A perfect example of her commitment. For the July 2020 election, an election like we've never seen before due to the pandemic, both the assistant and deputy clerk positions were vacant, leaving Sue as the sole staff member in the clerk's office. She wasn't sure how she'd pull that off, and Jolene was the first to offer her full support. She went above and beyond, stepping up to the plate and working long, hard hours to ensure that we did not falter and the election ran smoothly. Sue could not have done this without her. And that's in Sue's words. Jolene's dedication and knowledge of the election process has been invaluable, and more than ever before in 2020, as we face unprecedented challenges, she has taken on a lead role with new staff members when Sue was unable to answer questions or tied up working on other issues. Then came the general election of 2020 that will go down in history with unprecedented numbers of absentee ballots, phone calls, voter registrations, et cetera, et cetera. Unbelievable excessive hours and workload. Jolene assisted with training them and sharing her knowledge and expertise. Clerk staff worked long days and weekends to keep up with the workload, and Jolene was right there working alongside. As a temporary employee, she didn't have to do so, but she did. And again, Jolene, you've gone the extra mile. So, Jolene, please step forward and receive your award. And again, another well-deserved round of applause for Jolene. Well, that was a great surprise. I got to say, the next awardee, this is something that's very unique still, and you probably will understand once I read this, how nobody told me. Wow, I look bad. Liz must have put that up there. You're going to understand, Jolene, I'm making you look good. You're going to understand how hard of a decision this was, really. This is a nomination that came in from the Auburn Recreation Department and the Auburn Powell Center. And we'd like to basically share with you tonight the second winner of the Extra Mile recognition is Todd Whitcomb. Todd, are you here? Todd, stand on up. Todd Whitcomb. And so let me read the nomination form from the Recreation Department, and we verified this, and I got to tell you, this is an amazing story. Todd has been volunteering at the PAL. Let me use this PAL after-school program for over 3 years, offering free weekly soccer programs to the kids at the Chestnut Street neighborhood. Todd has grown the program to record numbers in 2019, with anywhere between 60 and 90 kids stopping by each session to engage in soccer and skills and drills. Working with local volunteers, many of which were current or former Central Maine Community College soccer players or coaches, Todd would help develop skills and the love of the game through a series of fun drills and games, and was able to secure donations for goals and other equipment for the program. Todd was quick to identify the need for a soccer program in 2017 when he worked with Sean to engage the PAL after-school kids in a sport that was either new or familiar from their previous countries. Todd is a teacher for the Auburn School District, and he also sits on the Soccer Maine Board of Directors and coaches various teams throughout the state of Maine. When Yarmouth girls team heard about the PAL soccer program and some of the challenges Todd saw with the kids on the Chestnut Street neighborhood, the girls' coach supported the idea for a fundraiser to help support the PAL program. Together with the help of Todd, the Yarmouth girls' Colts soccer team was organized, and they raised $1,000 for PAL soccer programs, specifically for equipment, clothing, seats, etc. One would think it would stop there, but it didn't. They continued to look for additional support, and Todd was able to secure a $10,000 grant from Dick's Sporting Goods for the PAL soccer program. This grant will help ensure much-needed equipment like goals, soccer balls, cleats, socks, mouth guards, sports bras, and culturally appropriate sport athletic wear. Todd and Sean worked with the Recreation Department to develop unused space in the park to install a permanent futsal court, which if you drive down Union Street bypass, you will see not one, but 2 of them today. Because our typical soccer program and the field that was used was not always available due to weather, field conditions, or other programs being scheduled. There's a need for a dedicated soccer area. After developing the design and cost, Todd was able to connect the rec department with Soccer Maine for a grant to help fund a space that would have 2 courts, allowing for more playing time for kids in the community. Todd was also able to work with Dick's Sporting Goods again and applied for and received a $25,000 grant to help support 2 futsal courts. To say Todd is an asset for this community and the PAL soccer program is a complete understatement. His dedication not only to the sport of soccer, but developing young players, growing the love of the game, and the love of his community, clearly demonstrates through his efforts to grow and provide after-school programs with an elite level of experience for free. Todd Whitcomb, I thank you and applaud you on behalf of Auburn. over $35,000. And I remember when Phil and I heard about this, we were just like, what? Did someone just go out and just do this? It's an amazing example, going the extra 100 miles. Todd, I got to thank you very much. On behalf of Auburn again, I can never repay that.
We also love those who, since it got moved, the kids all climb on that climbing thing.
Oh, the gym thing? Yeah.
That's their favorite thing.
It is. That's awesome. Okay. We get back on the agenda. So again, we do this every year, folks. We're always taking nominees. So please, if you know someone who goes the extra mile, let us know. More extra mile recognition. After that, I do have one other thing. Then I'm going to turn this over to communication on the residential strip zones. We have a proclamation. This is a joint proclamation. It's not on tonight's agenda, but I wanted to make sure that was an oversight, because unlike 99% of all of our proclamations, this is a joint proclamation with the mayor of Lewiston proclaiming Small Business Saturday for 2021. I'd like to read it. The cities of Lewiston and Auburn celebrate their local small businesses and the contributions they make to the local economy and community. And whereas, according to the United States Small Business Administration, there are 31.7 million small businesses in the United States. They represent 99.7% of firms with paid employees, and they are responsible for 65.1% of net new jobs created from 2000 to 2019. And whereas, small businesses employ 47.1% of the employees in the private sector in the United States. 88% of U.S. consumers feel a personal commitment to support small businesses in the wake of the pandemic, and 92% of small business owners have pivoted the way they do business to stay open during the pandemic. And whereas a total of 97% of Small Business Saturday shoppers recognize the impact they can make by shopping small, 85% of them also encourage friends and family to do so as well. Whereas Lewiston and Auburn support local businesses, recognize they create jobs, boost the economy, and preserve communities, and advocacy groups as well as public and private organizations across the country have endorsed the Saturday after Thanksgiving as Small Business Saturday. Now, therefore, we, Lewiston Mayor Mark Hare, and Auburn Mayor Jason Levesque, yeah, that was a joke. No offense, Mark. Do hereby proclaim November 27th, 2021 as Small Business Saturday within our respective municipalities, and urge local residents as well as communities across the country to support small businesses, merchants on both Small Business Saturday and throughout the year. So that's a proclamation on Small Business Saturday. Again, it's November 27th, 2021 this year. We'll now move on to the second part of communications, which is Eric Cousin to give an update from the Planning Board on strip zones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. Last Tuesday, the Planning Board held a public hearing and provided a recommendation on the residential strip expansions. This discussion started in May. The last time that it was before the council for an actually public noticed meeting, and first reading was July 19th. The Planning Board, at their meeting last Tuesday, made a recommendation recommending that the City Council not move forward with the implementation of the residential strip expansions. We had talked about the process from here with the council, and just as staff making a recommendation, since the first reading and public hearing that was held by this board on July 19th, there's been a number of changes that have been made. You could argue either way that first reading is still valid, that public hearing is still valid, but I think there's also the argument that there's been enough changes made since then to the proposal that there really should be another second public hearing and a second reading. When we find ourselves in that situation, I would generally recommend that we have an extra meeting rather than one fewer meetings. The changes that have happened since then have been not to expand the residential strip in areas where there was a subdivision that was expanded under the previous 750-foot residential strips. Johnson Hill Road, there was an error pointed out in our maps that didn't match the council directive, so we reduced that area to better match the council directive. the decision was made and the maps were updated not to include a larger or wider residential strip, an expanded residential strip along the backside of Taylor Pond, based on the council directives. At the north end of Taylor Pond, there was an error pointed out in how we were interpreting the maps, that we were showing a larger area of residential zoning. It was pointed out at one of the public meetings. We've reduced that to match the directive of the council. And also along Riverside Drive, we updated the maps after that to not expand to 750 feet where the floodplain was the boundary, the back boundary of the residential strip. So, well, I think you have options to either have second and final reading and public hearing at the next meeting. Staff recommends having two additional meetings. One of them will be a public hearing. The second one doesn't have to be.
Before, I'd like to open up to some questions. Some clarity on this one. This was, going back, trying to find records of when this was moved from 750 feet down to 400. It's existing. Can't find records on how long that process took, but it seems that it was substantially less than what this one's taking. We've had updates throughout on the findings, updated maps and so forth, but the planning board didn't give any recommendations, and that's where I'm wondering where these changes are. The planning board is has to operate under the same rules as the city council, and only direction can be done through oral motion and those recommendations. So the only thing we have from the planning board is not to approve it. We don't have any, unless I'm missing it, did they ever do a recommendation that they voted on certain recommendations for the strip zone, or is all this coming out of workshop?
So you're referring to the changes in the maps over the last 5 months.
Correct.
So those are things that came out of the July meeting from the council. We had a meeting where we actually asked for help in interpreting those maps. And then through the public process, it's where people pointed out where we had misinterpreted those directives, that we were not drawing the lines on the maps the way that the council had clarified for us. So the planning board didn't physically make these changes. It was us responding to the council directive. And then making adjustments where we were pointed out that we made errors in interpreting that. But you're correct, the planning board, at the last meeting where they actually took a vote on this item, they talked about edits that could be made, as you do. Certain members proposed edits that would have made that particular member comfortable with potentially forwarding a positive recommendation. But ultimately, the motion did not include those pieces. You can look at the discussion. We can give you a link to the meeting. But ultimately, the motion didn't include any edits. It just was a negative recommendation.
They didn't give justification, i.e. why it was negative, was it against the comp plan, traffic count? I mean, there was probably a dozen hours or so of meetings with staff on this, but they didn't give us the reasons why?
The discussion included some of those reasons, but it was not part of the motion.
It was not part of the motion, so they didn't give us, okay.
Yeah.
Questions?
We'll have the minutes as well, so we can we'll have the exact wording by the time we do a public hearing.
You can only communicate by motion, though. I think that's where my follow-up is training with planning board and everybody else. There's only one way to communicate, and that's through a motion. That oral motion, resolve, orders, et cetera, amendments. We have to do it, they have to do it. So that's just as a takeaway on every topic, I think. Questions?
I appreciate your questions. There was quite a bit of discussion among the planning board members addressing the individual changes. You're correct that there weren't individual votes on each of those, but there was a lot of discussion. So I just want to be clear, when we talk about this in terms of having to have an additional meeting for a public hearing, that will happen with this council, those two meetings?
So, in talking with the city clerk, it does not require, this sitting term of the councilors can do a one reading, and the second term, or the incoming term, councilors could do the second reading. So there's no requirement for that. That is really up for the council to decide how you'd like to proceed with it. You're the governing body at this point. You can make that determination as a council.
Through a motion?
And we've already had one reading vote months ago at the city council level on this. So are two additional votes needed, or just a second final vote?
As Eric said, it's not needed
But it's
Eric would
recommended.
recommend, because of the changes that it would happen, the council could just say, we want to have the final reading on this at the December 6th meeting. You could proceed with that. Or you could go with 2. If the councils weren't changing, as Eric and I talked about this morning, if the councils weren't changing, Eric's recommendation would be the same as what it is right now. So that's why we asked the clerk on, can the second reading take place with a new council? There's nothing that prohibits that. So that's why we move forward with the original recommendation from Eric regarding the 2 readings. The council could say, we've already made 1 reading. There's been enough information. You could go ahead and proceed with a vote of the second reading. But we would need to, Eric, do we need to do a public hearing for this? We already did 1 public hearing, correct?
And we still have time to do a public hearing and second reading on December 6th, if that's what the council prefers, and that would be the final reading. But it's been a long time since we had that original one. Some things have changed, but we've done at least 3 public notices at the planning board and informational meeting level, 1 at the city council. So there's been a lot of public involvement, but that has grown during the second half of that discussion. So if the council prefers, we can schedule it for second reading. That just wasn't staff's recommendation.
There's a protocol, and if there's 2 counselors that want to bring this up for a vote, I mean, right now I think, and this is up to the council, but I'm just outlining what you all can do. Right now we have a staff recommendation going for 2 votes in a public hearing, but as Phil said, you have jurisdiction and justification as a governing body to do what you'd want. If 2 counselors wanted this to come up on the December 6th meeting, then they would just request that to the city manager. It's on the December 6th meeting. So you have time to think about it.
And be specific that it would be the second reading. So if I do not hear from counselors, we will proceed with first reading at the December 6th meeting. If 2 counselors do request for it to be on the agenda as a second reading, we will put it on the agenda for a second reading and public hearing.
And
Yes.
and the vote.
Public hearing and a vote.
So-
Second reading.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I'm not sure, is the city staff recommending 2 readings, or they're just saying these are the options that you have?
I'm recommending 2 readings, but I can understand after this discussion that the council is changing. You could argue either way, based on the process we've had, that the first reading is done. The map is close enough to what it was then that it doesn't warrant a second reading. I was just erring on the side of caution.
And if we had an additional meeting of this council, could we do it, how would that happen? So
You're talking about having an emergency meeting?
Yeah. I'm just asking.
I don't know.
protocol.
So you're thinking about doing, just so I can repeat, you're thinking of a public hearing, 2 readings, starting from scratch, reading 1 and then reading 2. Public hearing, in theory, there could be a special meeting. Practicality, we have to give 14 days on a public notice. I mean, legally, I'm sorry.
So go ahead and tell us what the procedure is.
Yeah, that's tight.
So typically, an ordinance requires 2 readings, except when the requirement of a reading on 2 separate days has been dispensed by a unanimous vote of the councilors present and voting.
So what Sue's referring to is you could have this on the December 6th meeting as a first, suspend the rules, adopt it on a second reading, do it all on the same night. But Sue, procedures for the council calling a second meeting separate from December 6th, but before the inauguration on the 13th.
Oh, calling for a special meeting?
Normally either called by the mayor or the city manager, but can be requested by 2 city councilors.
And if we did the public notice for a proper public hearing on the 6th, then the second reading would not need to be a public hearing, is my understanding.
You'd still need, and you could suspend the rules, unanimously consent to have the second reading that night. Or you could have a special meeting between the 6th and the 13th. Nothing stipulates how many days need to go past before you have a second meeting. In theory, you could have a second meeting on the 7th.
So just, again, to play this out, and then I'll let others speak. We could have the second reading and the vote on December 6th without having to have an additional reading, just in saying that there has been enough public comment, and we did have the initial reading, can't remember the date, whenever that was. So part of it is I have to say that there has been a lot of public comment, a lot of work on the part of the staff. I hope that the council has kept up with that, because I feel that we're in a place, and I've gone to all the meetings, so I have to say that, I feel that we're in a place to be able to do the second reading and the vote on December 6th. But
And just remember, I mean, a new council does, new things happen. If something fails in one council, it can be brought up in a new council. So, you know, you think about what you're doing. I like the concept of incorporating new council with the old council on a first and second reading, because you've got a nice spread and continuity. Ideally, I wanted all this settled 2 or 3 months ago while we had all the legacy knowledge, but that ship might have sailed. But that's something that the council, I have no control over. That's something the council has to determine, and you do have to get 2 people. If you want to run through on that, we can't debate that right now. Get it out to the city manager or myself or both, and we'll schedule it, and, you know, based upon the recommendations of the council.
And you mentioned legacy knowledge. I think there is a lot of legacy knowledge in this council to be able to make an informed, incorporating a lot of public comment, an informed vote on the 6th, as opposed to pushing it to the next council who does not have this legacy knowledge. And I only know of one new council member coming on who has been to any of the meetings.
You have 2 on the planning board right now that are going to be counselors too. So they're pretty intimate. So any other questions on protocol? Councilor Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's nothing to do with protocol. It's just the mechanics of everything. The planning board is elected to be a body amongst themselves in order to form judgments on the information that they are given. Granted, the comp plan group has worked their hearts out to do where they've got to be today, but there is no clear-cut decision from the planning board. In other words, they're at loss too to decide which is the best plans for the city of Auburn based on the information that they've processed, as well as other stuff that's still going to come down the pike with
Councilor Gary, point of order on 2 facts. Okay. Point 1, the planning board is not elected. They are appointed by the city council. Point 2, they gave us a clear recommendation, which is the word used within our charter and ordinances of what their roles and responsibility are, is give recommendations to the city council.
But they didn't finish all of it because they recommended not to do anything.
That's their recommendation.
Right. And if we put them in the power in order to be able to do these types of ordinances and legislations, and I know we support or not, then we should listen to their judgment and back off on this.
Well, okay, so we didn't give them the power. They're only there to recommend courses of action for the city council. I can count many times where we didn't listen. But with that said, we do, as Councilor Zania pointed to, owe this city council and some finality, at least temporarily, on this issue. So it's almost like that hanging out there in space. We have 1 vote down. Whether it happens now or later, there does need to be closure. So I think we're good. I think we have some direction. It's in city council's court at this point, whether or not and what to do. So I encourage everybody to get some consensus here, figure that out, and then submit a recommendation or a request, I should say, to the city manager or myself. Okay?
And just I'm sorry, Mayor Levesque, but just to make sure that anybody in the public listening knows, the process could be now that 2 city councilors request that there be a final reading and a vote on December 6th.
Could be. Yeah, absolutely. I do believe you have 14 days to publish there's a time frame. So I want to give you some, you can't, in other words, you can't do this on December 2nd, maybe.
Right.
It has to be in the newspaper more than 12 days before the meeting.
More than 12 days.
Which takes about 14 to give to the.
So if that course of action is going to happen, Bill's counting.
So by Wednesday, the 24th.
We'd have to know.
Thank you.
I'd probably say Tuesday the 23rd, because a lot of people take the 24th off, it's the day before Thanksgiving. Yep. Good. Moving along.
Thank you.
No, thank you, Eric. Council communications. Does anybody on the council have any communications that they would like to share with the city? Councilor Zania?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The elected officials recently received a communication that contains some disparaging and inappropriate language when it comes to substance use disorder. I'd like to read a few things. One is a quote from William White: "Words have immense power to wound or to heal. The right words catalyze personal transformation and offer invitations to citizenship and community service. The wrong words stigmatize and disempower." It's important to remember that substance use disorders are treatable and that recovery is a reality and possible for everyone, and provide opportunities, and we need to provide opportunities to help people with substance use disorder achieve recovery. We can never forget that the faces of substance use disorders are real people. They're beloved family members, a friend, a colleague, and ourselves. Substance use disorder is a chronic medical condition characterized by clinically significant impairments in health, social function, and voluntary control over substance use. As such, they are subject to relapse and influenced by general, developmental, behavioral, social, and environmental factors. People who suffer from substance use disorders, recovering or not, have essential worth and dignity. Shame and discrimination prevents many individuals from seeking help. By some estimates, it can take as long as 8 or 9 years after a person first seeks formal help to achieve sustained recovery. From the Surgeon General, stigma has created an added burden of shame that has made people with substance use disorders less likely to come forward and seek help. We must help everyone see that addiction is not a character flaw. It is a chronic illness that we must approach with the same skill and compassion with which we approach heart disease, diabetes, and cancer. Language matters. Thank you.
Any other counselor have any more communication? No? I'd like one thing to communicate, actually two things. City manager and I, Thursday was Veterans Day. City manager and I, along with Councilor Walker, Councilor Milks, and I apologize if I missed seeing any of you there, attended probably the largest in memory Veterans Day activity at Veterans Park in Lewiston on Veterans Day. It was phenomenal. It's a dedication of a new Vietnam War memorial. It was really, really nice to see there. Sadly, there was only one World War II veteran. It's great to see him out there, and I got a chance to introduce him to my son. So, yeah, just keep those in your thoughts. It was a good Veterans Day. I did announce and remind everybody that we do have our veterans reimbursement or exemption for permitting for residential construction, i.e. porches, building a home, and so forth, as well as 50% waiving for veterans-owned small businesses when they're doing commercial applications. It was very well received. Many people had no idea that existed, so I want all of us to keep reminding our veterans and their widows to take care of that, okay? Or at least apply, or at least so they know. Second, Staples. We went and followed up with a joint ribbon cutting at Staples with the LA Chamber of Commerce. Staples Corporate was there. We announced, which you all got information on, our Auburn Startup Program, which came out of a brainstorming session with the Chamber of Commerce and myself on the Friday before. It is based, and Staples ran with it and doubled it. Bottom line is we're going to start taking applications under goauburn.me for 3 entrepreneurs to be selected to receive 4 months of free private office co-working space in the new Staples Connect, which is only the second Staples Connect in the United States. They're going to receive a $500 gift card from Staples, 10% off, free parking, free coffee, a lot of other perks. And it's really, and a free 1-year membership into the Chamber of Commerce. What this is doing is it's allowing those small startups to have a place to call home and really catapult their businesses, hopefully making much larger businesses and sustainable businesses for the next generation. I'd like to thank Staples Corporate for jumping on board really quickly. I'd like to thank the Chamber of Commerce for embracing a crazy idea over lunch and matching it up and really rolling it out. But I really, really would like to take this time and thank staff, Phil, Glenn Holmes, Jay Brenchick, Liz Allen, everybody else who took a crazy concept and within less than 72 hours from inception made it a reality. This will change lives, and I think it's great that Auburn can do this, that we're flexible enough and the council can support that flexibility, allowing staff and any ideas to really come to fruition and help the population, or our residents. So really great, and I'm really, really proud, and I hope we all are really proud of staff for what they've done and turned around. So it's something to think about something, but it's more to actually execute. So that's my communication on that. Move on, Mr. Manager, do you have any communications?
No, Mayor.
Okay. Open this up to the first open session of the night. Any member of the public that would like to speak may do so by stepping up to the podium. I'd ask you to state your name and address. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. And members of the audience, please step up to the podium if you'd like to speak.
Hi, I'm Braden from Braden's Vegetable Stand, and this year, I farmed my grandfather's land, Dan Herrick, at 470 Hatch Road and 963 Riverside Drive. I had a great year with my squash, and I really appreciate the elderly people and Barker Arms people for supporting me at my vegetable stand. To give back to them, I would like to donate 75 pounds of butternut squash to the age-friendly group and 3 turkeys that we had raised on our farm. The squash can be picked up whenever needed, and the turkeys can be picked up, or we can drop it off the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. My phone number is 207...
Okay, yep. We'll get it. I don't want everybody calling you up for... Actually, that might not be a bad mark. You might get a lot of calls. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, that right there, I mean, Councilor Walker, Councilor Gary, thank you. I'll coordinate the pickup. I'll go over there. But listen, those turkeys, no offense, they can't be moving when I get them. Just, I'd like them nice bagged up, not moving, all ready for the oven, okay? Nothing live. I know Danny probably put them live in the back of my car.
Mr. Mayor.
So that's great. That's going to feed a lot of people Thanksgiving at the free Thanksgiving dinner that we're having at the Auburn Senior Community Center. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I need to beg the council's indulgence. As you know, my brother passed away 4 years ago due to kidney failure. For the last 4 years, I've been doing a scholarship for young people to help with their education. His major was in theater arts. He loved everything dealing with the arts, singing, dancing, and whole 9 yards. Tonight, it's hard. I'm announcing this year's grantee. He is the youngest grantee of this scholarship, and it's been going on now for 4 years. The scholarship is going to Braden Netto. He amplifies, I mean, I know my brother does theater arts and stuff, but agriculture and farming is also a form of art. This young gentleman is 12 years old. He amplifies what we've been trying to do is help our newbie young farmers to take hold and grow and do all the things. He has not said everything that he does. He has brought over vegetables to the senior housings. I've been privileged for the last 2 years for him to drop off groceries and allowed me to sell his vegetables. I didn't make anything on it, for pennies on the dollar, and we fed hundreds of tenants at Barker. And if he knew, or if I knew that they didn't have it, we gave it to them. And also, I know he knew that he gave me more produce than I could sell. And then when I told him that I had it, he said, oh, don't worry about it, just give it to somebody that'll need it. So the scholarship is, it's $100 to give your Grammy Herrick to put away for your college education. The second $100 is normally only a $100 grant. The second one is to help you with your business that's coming up, because you not only did a banger business this year, this is your second plus year in a row, and at the rate you're growing, you're going to be the example for all our young farmers as well as our current farmers. So before I get yapping more, please come up and get your money.
Is there there anybody else from the public that would like to speak at tonight's first open session?
Hello, everyone. My name's Judith Harris. I live here in Auburn, and I just wanted to tell you that my heart is breaking because of nature and our earth. And I'm doing everything I can to locally to make Auburn a better place. I am interested in proposing that the city of Auburn and possibly Lewiston start a botanical garden to teach young people about native plants, how to take care of the earth, how to pick up litter, how to take care of the world that means so much to all of us. That's it.
Well, thank you very much. Is there anybody else from the public that would like to speak? None being, I'll now close this first open session. Moving on to unfinished business, we have Ordinance 36-11012021, amending Auburn's Code of Ordinances, Chapter 46, Street Names and Numbering. Second reading. Have a motion?
So moved.
Councilor Boss, second. Councilor Carrier. Open this up to the public. Is there anybody in the public that would like to speak about street naming? None being, it is quite actually interesting. Bring it back to the council. Council, debate? None? Ask for a vote. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Counselor Carrier?
Yes.
Counselor Walker?
Yes.
Counselor Boss?
Yes.
Counselor Gary?
Yes.
Counselor Lasagna?
Yes.
Counselor McLeod?
Yes.
Passes by a vote of 6-0. Next, we have Ordinance 37-11012121, amending Auburn's Code of Ordinances, General Assistance Maximums. Second reading. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Hold on. Got a second for Councilor. I didn't get it first. First, Councilor Boss. Okay. Second, Councilor Gary. Let's open this up to the public for comment. Any members of the public like to speak? None being, bring it back to the council. Council, anybody want to speak either supportive or in opposition of this? None. I'll ask for a vote. Madam Clerk.
Counselor Carrier?
Yes.
Counselor Walker?
Yes.
Counselor Boss?
Yes.
Counselor Gary?
Yes.
Counselor Lasagna?
Yes.
Counselor McLeod?
Yes.
Passes 6-0. Now we're going to move on to new business. Order 129-111-52021, approving the sale of surplus property of the City of Auburn, of the Auburn Lewiston Airport in accordance with Article 8 of the Interlocal Agreement for the disposal of surplus property. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Councilor Carrier, and I got a one from Councilor Walker. I'm going to open this up to the public for comment. Anybody in the public like to comment? None being, bring it back to the council for debate. Council? No? Ask for a show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? Passes 6-0. Next, Ordinance 38-111-52021, amending Auburn's Code of Ordinances, Chapter 2, Section 2-25, Salaries, Mayor. This is a public hearing and first reading. I believe there's only one hearing on this, correct? This is not an ordinance?
Ordinance.
This is an ordinance, so it's two readings.
Yes.
Correct, okay.
Yep.
So we have two readings on this. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion, Councilor McLeod, second for Councilor Walker, I think I heard. I'll open this up to the public. Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak?
Point of information.
Yes.
If we support this, when does it actually goes into effect on the
I
record?
can cover that when it comes back to us.
Yeah, when it comes back, we will talk about all that information. I'm going to turn it over to the city manager. He's done the research on that.
Good evening. Thank you for indulging me for this moment. Well, first of all, I want to start out by thanking you guys for the last couple of years. It had to have been crazy to do what you've done with the COVID going around and everything changing and the schedules. It must have been nuts. And having done it without COVID, I can't understand how you got through it, but you did, and I appreciate that. As you know, this is a subject that I have brought up before, and I thought that we needed to better compensate our elected officials. I think what I'd like to do, though, is say that I may have thought this is a little bit higher than I would have gone. And I'm making the request that maybe one of you folks on the board would make a motion to amend this with an option of making, say, $6,000 for the mayor. And I got more when it comes to other elected officials, but where it's a separate item, I'll just only talk about this one. And it's not because I feel it isn't worth it. I don't think anybody in this room, including myself, were ever doing this for the money. And so I didn't think that the increase was actually going to make that much of a difference, except that I think it was necessary and should be more often, not just every 10 to 15, 20 years. More councils should have the courage that you guys have right now of talking about this, because it is courage for an elected official to talk about this, but it needs to be done. I just wish it would be done more often and not like doubling or close to doubling when we do it every 10 or 15 years. So I would just ask for that and then hope that future councils will have the courage to look at this subject again in 3 or 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Former Councilor Titus. Former. Does anybody else of the public like to speak on this? None being, I'll bring this back to the council. First, I'm going to turn it over to the city manager, who has some, I think, information that you need to know before making decisions on all these ordinances.
So this is also just a report to follow up on our workshop at the last meeting. So at the last meeting, consensus was that we would present a recommendation that mirrored the city of Lewiston's recent adjustments that they just passed. So those are the changes that you see here, with the exception, and Mayor, if I can, I'm going to go beyond just this one order to cover all of them. So with the exception of the city council, and then also staggering in the amounts for school committee and planning board. And the reasoning for doing that is that after looking, I had received information from individuals regarding the language within the charter. We did reach out to Maine Municipal Association's legal and also the city's legal to try to get a clear interpretation on this. And the challenge there was clear. The language isn't clear the way that it's written, and it does need to be amended. And so that will be something that will be important to take a look at in the future. However, based on the way that it is written, it was best to err on the side of caution and not move forward with the city council adjustments for this incoming term. The reasoning is because the language does state that it has to do with the election. The election is mentioned in that language, and so because the election is listed rather than just the new term. I believe the intent is that it's the new term. We could do that. MMA recommended that we go and look to see if there are any notes from the report from the charter. There are none that we could find. So there's really, it would be difficult to find what the intent was. So based off from that, we are recommending that you go based off from the legal opinions, which is to use the language of elections, which means that the election already occurred. That means before any increase takes place with the council, and it's only the council, the language is clear that it's the city councilor and not others within the elected or appointed body. And so that's why you don't see the city council moving forward in this term. It would be in 2023. However, we recommend, because this is being discussed now, that it would just be done. This council could go ahead and make that order and do that in 2023 when the next term of councilors come in. So to break down what took place, we are based on what the recommendation was for that was occurring in Lewiston. We moved forward with $7,000 for the mayor salary. School committee would be $1,800 to match what the current city council receives. In 2023, that would advance to $4,000 along with the incoming city council. The planning board to start with would be $650, and that would increase to $1,200 in 2023. And the regulatory board would remain the same at $600 starting after this year rather, and just remain the same. That is in alignment with the committees that were pretty similar to that within the city of Lewiston. I did ask Sue to go back and do some research. We had been using, if you look at the original workshop information sheet, we were using the 2005 charter. That's what was available. But there was no mention necessarily in there regarding salary. There was just language in there about if when the salary goes into effect. It was under Article 10 of the charter. And so I asked Sue to do some research. She went back. The actual last time that the compensation changed for the mayor or council or school committee was in 1990 is when those numbers had gone in. So we're over 30 years of this same rate. So if you were to take the dollar value in 1990 and you were to compare that with what the dollar value is today, you were right on track with the amounts. The $4,000 for council is right on track with what that dollar value would be today after 30 years. And the same with the $7,000 for mayor and the other, and for school committee would be, obviously, we're really moving the school committee to be in alignment with the council. So I think the amounts that came up were where they need to be. And then I would just add to that, what we had also discussed was the expanding the opportunity for those to take the office. As I think our former councilor Titus had mentioned, no one really does it for the money. However, it does expand the opportunity for others to be able to take the seat who may have expenses as a result of filling this office. These funds would allow that to take place, like childcare or other. We have many individuals within our community that provide assistance to loved ones, their elderly members of their family. This would allow for some at least expenses to be able to do that, and this would meet that. I believe the information sheet breaks down for you the financial impacts over the next this year, and then also the full year moving forward after this year's adjustments, and then also the 2023 impacts. But would certainly just want to make, it was a lot on that information sheet, so I want to make sure you had the full update on the process.
Open this up to the council for debate. Again, the city manager talked about all of the orders, which is good, puts in context, but we're just talking about the mayoral salary. Councilor?
I just wanted a clarifying question about, I see, again, the rest of them have dates. Is there a reason why the mayoral one isn't dated when it also has language about the next election in our charter?
So the ruling that came back from legal was that it's in that paragraph, but it's actually specifically related to the councilors. It's not referencing the mayor. Even though the paragraph says council, that is a separate, legal found that it was a separate determination.
Any other debate? Comment? Okay. I will say that I think just in general, there are the time constraints. I'm thinking the next mayors, okay? This is, if you look at inflation, $4,000 in 1990 equates out to $8,400 in today's dollars. So, there is some adjustments that probably should be made. No other comments? I'm going to ask for a vote at this time. It's an
Mr.
ordinance,
Mayor.
first reading.
I would like to make an amendment to this order.
I have a motion to amend.
I would like to take the recommendation from the public and cut it down from 7,000 down to 6,000 a year.
I have a motion to amend from 7,000 to 6,000 for mayoral pay. Do I have a second? None being, the motion fails. Sue, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Counselor Carrier.
Yes.
Counselor Walker.
Yes.
Counselor Boss.
Yes.
Counselor Gary.
No.
Counselor Lasagna.
Yes.
Counselor McLeod.
Yes.
Order passes first reading, vote of 5-1. Next. We have Order 39-11152021, amending Auburn's Code of Ordinances, Chapter 2, Section 2-382, salaries of school committee members. This is a public hearing and first reading. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I got a motion from Councilor Carrier, second from Councilor Boss. Open this up to the public. Anybody from the public like to speak? None being, I'll bring this back to the council. Council, we heard from the manager. This is actually bringing this number up so it's equal with the city council. It does take effect amongst the start of the new term. Is there any debate, discussion? Mr. Manager?
I would just report that I did meet with the school superintendent This impacts their budget, so we had a conversation. She understands what that number is going to look like, and moving forward, just want to make sure you knew that we were communicating with the school on this.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, I'd like to ask for a roll call vote, please.
Counselor Carrier?
Yes.
Counselor Walker?
Yes.
Counselor Boss?
Yes.
Counselor Gary?
Yes.
Counselor Lasagna?
Yes.
Counselor McLeod?
Yes.
Passes 6-0. Next, we have ordinance 40-111-52021, amending Auburn's Code of Ordinances, Chapter 2, Administration, Division 4, Planning Board, Section 2-466, by adding Section F, compensation of planning board members. This is a public hearing and first reading. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion from Councilor Carrier, second from Councilor McLeod. I'll open this up to the public. Anybody from the public like to speak? None being, I'll bring it back to the council. Planning board gets paid 0. This is a right sizing of their compensation. Any questions, debates, anybody in favor? Opposition? No, great. Let's get a vote.
Counselor Carrier?
Yes.
Counselor Walker?
I'll abstain from this one.
One abstention. Yep, keep going.
Counselor Boss?
Yes.
Counselor Gary?
No.
Counselor Lasagna?
Yes.
Counselor McLeod?
Yes.
Passes 4 yes, 1 no, 1 abstention. Next is order.
Mr. Mayor, the reason I abstain is because one of the planning board live in my household.
Fair enough. Thank you for the clarification. Next is ordinance 41-111-52021, amending Auburn's Code of Ordinances, Chapter 2, Administration, Division 2, by adding Section 2-441, compensation of the Regulatory Advisory Board. This is a public hearing and first reading. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion from Councilor Carey, second from Councilor Boss. Open this up to the public. Anybody in the public like to speak on this issue? Not being, I'll bring it back to the council. Regulatory Board is a fairly new board that we've created. And it's fitting with other cities. I've seen that. Any other comments? Support? Opposition? None? Sue?
Counselor Carrier?
Yes.
Counselor Walker?
Yes.
Counselor Boss?
Yes.
Counselor Gary?
Yes.
Counselor Lasagna?
Yes.
Counselor McLeod?
Yes.
Passes 6-0. Next is ordinance 42-111-52021, amending Auburn's Code of Ordinances, Chapter 2, Section 2-25, salaries, effective 12/18/2023. This is a public hearing and first reading. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Councilor Carrier, second from Councilor Boss. Open this up to the public. Anybody in the public like to speak on this issue?
Thank you. Andy Teddy's 24 Lubrelite Lane. I would, on this particular one, again, I talked before about my reasoning for saying this. I believe that increases are necessary. I would hope that someone on the board might offer an alternative of $3,000. And also, I think the city manager talked about this board has a purview of making it effective immediately, or rather in 2022.
Right.
If they so choose. This is just a cautionary thing, and I would recommend that maybe somebody look at that and take, this is the first reading, but try to make that effective immediately, or actually in December of 2021 would be the, instead of 2023, but changing it to 3,000 rather than 4, again, for the same reasoning. We do need to be increasing this, but I think that a more than doubling may be a bit much. Thank you.
Bring it back to the council. Council. So, I mean, there's a Councilor Titus, and I appreciate Councilor Titus, A, being involved after he's left the council, but he's always been very passionate about this, and rightfully so. I just will remind everybody that if you look at the rate of inflation in 1990, the now current city council salary would actually, when you normalize it for inflationary pressures, cost of living, et cetera, it would be about $4,100 a year. So I always say that you think about what the intent was in 1990 for our compensation. Are we? It's not a raise, and if it's lower, is it actually a pay decrease? That's effectively what's going on. So I think the economics on this are quite interesting. Is there any other comments? Again, legal recommendations, but not active law, if you would, though it does potentially open up for lawsuit.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's been a privilege to be a city councilor. I ran and started in this process not even knowing what we were getting for a pay. Even when I was in the legislature, I've never, ever supported a pay increase. I can't in good conscience tonight support this. I cannot support increasing our salary from what the current rate is.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak in opposition to this?
Oh,
Just we're on a roll in opposition. Thought I'd get it out of the way. Opposition? No? Support?
just what the mayor had said about the rate of inflation, I think is important to take into account. And I also want to reiterate what the city manager said, that there may be people who have things that they have to pay for that the rest of us don't. Childcare, I think, is a very important one. Gas. So I support this.
Anybody else would like to speak? Again, there is one more reading. It'll give you time to think about some of the amendments that could be made. Sue, can I get a vote, please?
Counselor Carrier?
Yes.
Counselor Walker?
Yes.
Counselor Boss?
Yes.
Counselor Gary?
No.
Counselor Lasagna?
Yes.
Counselor McLeod?
Yes.
Order passes 5-1. Ordinance 43-11152021, amending Auburn's Code of Ordinances, Chapter 2, Section 2-382, salaries of school committee members, effective 12/18/2023. It's a public hearing, first reading. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion, Councilor Boss, second from Councilor Carrier. Open this up to the public. Anybody in the public like to speak?
I don't get a chance to talk up here this many times when I was a counselor. Wow. My concern on this one is the same. I really do agree with the increases, but I think it's a bit much. I would ask that a motion be made to amend to 3,000 on this one as well, and also the same time frame question, which I know it was no interest in it with the council. But I also had one other question real quick, and I noticed that it also talked on the school committee that the mayor's appointee would also receive the same salary, and make sure that that's not overlapping with if it's a counselor who was chosen to be the mayor's designee would also receive another $4,000 for being a council representative for the school committee. Because it sounded to me like it could be an overlap there. And maybe that was always in the rule before, but just wanted clarification on that. Thank you.
Want to clarify? Or you want me to?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's fine. So the whoever the designee is does receive the same compensation as a school committee member. That's correct.
In theory, if you think about it, and we had talked about this, you might not have caught it during the last meeting. We asked Councilor Carrier about the time constraints. He's on subcommittees, correct, Councilor Carrier? You're a full-fledged member of the school board, and you're working the hours. So I guess the discussion was, as for Mr. Titus too, the discussion was, why would they get paid less than a school board member when they're a full-fledged school board member? So that was the argument that was made, in a nutshell. Is there any other comments on this? None? Okay, I'm going to ask.
Well, I just had a quick question. Is this to temper into the school budget on why it's in two tranches? 1,800 to bring it to where we are now, and then 4,000 when the council goes up?
That's correct.
So basically, the school committee doesn't get paid more than the council during their interim 2 years. Okay, Sue?
Counselor Carrier?
Yes.
Counselor Walker?
Yes.
Counselor Boss?
Yes.
Counselor Gary?
Yes.
Counselor Lasagna?
Yes.
Counselor McLeod?
Yes.
Passes 6-0. Next is Ordinance 44-11152021, amending Auburn's Code of Ordinance, Chapter 2, Planning Board, Section 2466, by adding Section F, compensation of planning board members. Wait, did we? I'm sorry.
You're correct.
I'm correct. Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion from a counselor?
So moved.
Second.
Boss, Counselor McLeod on the second. Anybody in the public like to speak about compensation for planning board members? None being, we'll bring that back to the council. Council discussion? None being, Sue, I'll ask for a vote, please.
Counselor Carrier?
Yes.
Counselor Walker?
I'll abstain.
Counselor Boss?
Yes.
Counselor Gary?
No.
Counselor Lasagna?
Yes.
Counselor McLeod?
Yes.
Order passes 5-1.
Nope, 4-2.
No.
I'm sorry, 4-2. Who's the second no?
4-1-1.
411.
Abstention and a no.
Abstention. Got it. Thank you.
4-1-1.
I'm just, it confused me a little bit with the phase in. I apologize. I had to get clarification. First is order, next, excuse me, is authorizing the city manager, which is order 130-111-52021, authorizing the city manager to execute a lease agreement between the Auburn School Department and Quark Automotive Corporation to create a playing field for Washburn Elementary School. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I I love the excitement and the
Everybody.
I'm going to just pick something. Councilor McLeod, Councilor Carrier. Open this up to the public for comment. Anybody like to speak on this? It's a great project. Good for these kids. About time. Get it done. Ask for a vote. This is in order. Sue? Actually? No, yeah, it is in order. But it's not an ordinance. So I'll just ask for a show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? None being? 6-0. Next, open session. Last open session of the night. Members of the public are invited to speak to the council about any issue directly related to city business, which is not on this agenda. Members, if you would like to speak, step up to the podium, state your name, address, limit your comments to 3 minutes. Nobody from the public would like to speak. I'm now going to close the second and last open session of the night. We're going to go into reports. Mayor's reports. There is nothing new from any committees or subcommittees that I'm on at this point in time that I haven't already told you. City councilors, start over here to the my right. City Councilor Carrier.
Nothing right now.
Go. Anything?
Slightly. Excuse me. To the kind lady that came up to promote gardens and community gardens and things, I'm a proponent for community gardens. We've got 3, and hopefully this next 2 years we'll be doing more. So thank you kind for coming forward, and please keep coming forward and bringing your ideas forward. And also maybe you can sit on a committee to help bring forward your dream and what you'd like to see done.
Councilor McLeod.
Just the LATC and LA 911 are both meeting this Thursday.
Nothing.
Councilor
Nothing
Boss.
for me, thank you.
Okay, moving along to the manager. Mr. Manager, reports.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a few items. First, inauguration planning is underway. This will be December 13th at the Auburn Senior Community Center. And really encourage all those that can attend to come. You'll be seeing more information as the planning develops further. Next is, I had mentioned at our last last council meeting, I think Councilor Lazine had asked for an update on what we're doing regarding equity and inclusion. And I'd mentioned that we were going to be doing a leadership activity with the staff. And so we had 30 of our leaders within the city come together for a leadership meeting. Some of those are deputies, assistants, and others that are in key roles throughout the city, maybe even as a manager of a department. And so there were 30 that came together. We broke the teams into partners. So they had 2 individuals. They weren't teamed up with anybody from their department or someone that they normally work with. And they were given scenarios. So we had 15 scenarios for them to go out into community and conduct. And so these scenarios were everything from obtaining housing to job employment, transportation, domestic violence, which someone might need to be seeking a protection from abuse order, substance disorder resources, food and clothing needs. They also needed to maneuver the city to see just how walkable our city is, especially walkability if you had to bring with you a cart with loads of laundry because your scenario was to get to wherever the local laundromat was. And also to see what that would be like if you had to navigate that on our public transit. And so the teams also took public transit to try to access a lot of these services. It was a great morning. We spent right up until just after 12 probably on these activities. Some of what they had to do was come back and actually make phone calls to these organizations to see how they could get access to services and navigate that. Challenges with COVID, some of these places are not even open, so you could navigate through transit and spend 2.5 hours on our bus system getting somewhere to only find out that they're not open because you may not have internet in our community and you might not be able to know that or even have access to whatever the number was, but you might know where Community Concepts is. So you would navigate through our transit all the way to Community Concepts, get there, realize that they're not open, and then realize that you now need to wait for another bus to be able to access yourself back to wherever you started. It was a great day for our staff. I think their eyes were open to the challenges of our transit system, which needs a complete overhaul. If you are trying to navigate, I would encourage any of our elected body, I know many of you have ridden the bus through your term, but I encourage others to try to navigate this. It is challenging. It is challenging to get anywhere within the city at a reasonable time, and to be able to have these conversations. Brian and I participated as well. We were as teamed up with others in the community. Within the staff, and we had our own exercise that we needed to carry out. I'm really grateful for our team members, Glenn Holmes, Rita Beaudry, and Holly Olivier, who wrote up the scenarios for us. And Jen Edwards. These were real cases that they were dealing with individuals within our community. So these weren't just made up. These were things that had happened to someone. One of those was even just if their vehicle was towed. Many times you get your vehicle towed, you would think, okay, I need to go to the tow company. I saw the tow company leave with the vehicle. I'll get transportation there the next day to try to receive my vehicle, retrieve it. To get there to only find out you need to have a release from the police department back here and pay for a fee here to then go back. And if your transportation is sitting in an impound lot, that to navigate that is really difficult because our transit doesn't go to where our tow companies are. And so that was part of that process, so that there was a real opening of all the different areas that our community experience on every single day, and how to access and how to be able to navigate the many different resources that we have, but how to navigate that. Just really demonstrated our need to have community coaches, community individuals that they can access and ask, how do I do whatever it is? How do I get access to this? How do I find the services that I'm looking for? So it was a great day. A lot of takeaways from our staff. Some of the takeaways also changed our process because you had individuals that don't normally deal with that were looking at it through a different lens, and was able to go to that manager that might be running that department to say, this is what I found on the website. This is what I found with your materials. This is what I found when I tried to access it. These need to be updated. And we also need to change our application process or whatever it might be. We probably had close to a dozen or more recommendations that came to staff to make immediate changes.
So, Mr. Manager, I'm putting you on the spot. What was your challenge, and how did you make out on your adventure?
Sure, I was teamed up with Matt Fifield, our deputy fire chief. Our challenge was that a young man who lives with his mom on 2nd Street needed to get to the community college to sign up for a work program, and to be able to get there and get back. And then also because they had lost their transportation and mom was also being evicted, we had to navigate how to obtain what else was available for housing based on her salary. And those salary cap challenges where she has a decent pay, she was using COVID funds to help cover her expenses, but now that was over. And so now what does she do to navigate that? So one, transit, I was really fortunate that we had Chad, who sits on our LATC meeting, was at the bus stop when we got there. Wealth of information. He saved us a great deal of time because he was able to tell us what we needed to do, where our transfers were, and how to access the bus system. And I got to tell you, probably the takeaway for everyone who rode the bus system was just how friendly everyone is on the bus. They are so helpful. They would get because we all had maps. First thing that we discovered when we started this was that our maps at City Hall were outdated. So this is where you come to get a bus pass. This is where you come to get a map. The maps aren't the current maps. They were 2018 maps. City clerks don't know when those maps change. So we need to have a better process of making sure the right maps are at the locations where we're providing passes, because we're handing out maps that were wrong. So everyone would have failed to start with because we did not have the right map. And not only that, but our bus drivers from WMTS, they were very helpful. Now, we did give a little warning to WMTS that we were going to be traveling on the bus to let the bus drivers know that we might be delaying some of what they were doing. But they were very helpful, and they assisted us greatly. But what we discovered was that we could go ahead and take that bus to the community college. We had to get off, and the next bus wasn't coming for another hour. And so in the application process, there was maybe 5 minutes. And so it was faster for us. We had the capability and the means. We walked from community college back to Barker Arms where we got the bus. We did that faster than any bus could have taken us back. And so that's what we did. So we were able to also see the walkability of our city by walking those streets. I probably have a dozen photos of sidewalk issues, some trees that are growing in our sidewalks that made it very difficult to navigate. So it was a good opportunity to kind of really get out and see our community in a different lens than what we normally do. So a great event, great response from the staff, and something that they want to see more of and want to be more involved in those types of things so that they can provide that input. So a little long-winded, Mr. Mayor, but that was a good report.
I'm kind of upset we weren't invited.
We'll bring you guys next time.
Bring us next time.
And may I just say, Mr. Manager, that this is light years ahead of where the city was 2 or 3 years ago in terms of this. This is a really effective way to do this in practice, not just in theory. And also it helps people understand that diversity, equity, inclusion doesn't just have to do with race. It's inclusive of all kinds of people. Thank you so much for doing that.
It's great.
That is outstanding. Okay, so anything else?
That's it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, next.
Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I wanna-
Councilor Walker?
I want to announce something, yeah. We're having a neighborhood watch on the 18th because we are doing a Thanksgiving dinner at Pettingill Park at the Senior Center on the 25th. So we've moved it back to the 18th at the 6th Street Congregational Church. So if you come into the neighborhood watch, you're going to want to come there, 6 o'clock, 6th Street Congregational Church.
6 p.m., 6th Street Congregational, November 18th. Okay.
That's correct.
And again, just this is, the Auburn Senior Center will be host to the free Thanksgiving dinner from
Free
noon to
dinner.
1:30 on November 25th. I'll be there serving this year, which I've
Good.
always popped in, but I want to serve. It's going to be good this year, so I'm excited. I'm excited to see everybody else. I think you're capped out at 150?
We hope we're going to hit the 150 for sure. We hope.
Very good, thank you. We're going to move on to the finance report now. We have, obviously, the finance report from Jill for October 21. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Councilor McLeod, do I have a second?
Second.
Councilor Boss. Ms. Eastman, do you have anything to comment about, or do you want to read your report? It is on file.
Does anybody have questions about it?
Comments, questions?
Counselor Titus.
Just for old time's sake?
Is normal, he's in the room, it makes me nervous about him.
Finance Director Eastman. No. I had a question on the EMS transport fund, where you have the capital reserve fund.
Yes.
Now, there's one of them that's listed in the investment schedule, and there's another one that's in the special revenue account. Are they separate or different?
The one in the special revenue account is the actual capital investment reserve.
Okay.
And the one in the general fund is just the revenue that comes in for that year. So it's part of the general fund budget.
Okay.
It offsets the property taxes.
Cool. Now, is all the expenditures out of that special revenue account, is that all CIP approved money, or?
Yes, it is.
It is.
The council approves all the expenditures out of there. So when we're doing CIP, I choose how much money we have in there. I know how much money we have in there. I put whichever ones should go there into that fund, and then it gets approved.
Very good. And the one last question, that account was set up originally to buy a new ambulance when we need to.
Yes,
and
we've
it
bought
looks like
3
we're-
now.
Right, but I'm wondering, is that going up fast enough for the next ambulance, or are we spending money for other things that are unrelated to a new ambulance? It might put us in trouble if we need to buy one.
No, they won't need new ones for like 6 years, because they just replaced all of them.
So we have a good 5 or 6
So
years.
they're on the plan, and we
Very
know, yeah.
Very good, thank you.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
We're here to serve. No, it's always good. There are no further comments from the public or the council. I'd like to ask for a vote. All those in favor of accepting the October 2021 finance report, please raise your hand. Opposed? None being? Approved 6-0. Next, actually, we have several, so we will go off air, but we do have executive sessions on the agenda. We will not be coming back in for,
Excuse me, when is our next meeting, Mr. Mayor?
our next meeting is December 6th.
We should make an announcement that December 4th is our big Christmas parade.
Thank you.
Moving on to Christmas.
Somebody, I don't have
Getting
all the
right to Christmas, you're
detail, but
right.
someone.
Thank you.
Brian? Brian has details.
Totally forgot about it.
So we're very excited in planning what's going to be a fantastic event, both in New Auburn and down in Festival Plaza. We are finalizing those details, which will be pushed out over the next 24 hours or so. We can safely say we've secured not one, but two Santas. So this is
How can that, that's not even possible. Point of order. Point of order.
a backup, if you will, for any young ones out there.
Santa's helper,
Exactly.
an identical twin.
Exactly. That's exactly it. So that information will be coming forthcoming, and we'll be touching base to coordinate. And the tree will be brought next Monday, and will be, I think, fully decorated before Thanksgiving. So we're on track.
Brian's child is an infant. He doesn't know Santa etiquette yet, so just give him some.
I'm gonna ruin him by 3, I tell you.
Well, the other big detail is the parade will start in New Auburn this year, coming through to Main Street from 136, coming all the way through to Main Street to Festival Plaza. And the New Auburn group will be partnered with the Auburn Santa Claus coming down to Festival Plaza.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Yeah, this is going to be an Auburn parade from New Auburn into downtown Auburn, Great Falls Plaza. So I know the tree is 40 feet tall. It might be the biggest tree we have ever had downtown. So that was pure luck. It was residing on Center Street before the owner wanted to get rid of it. So it worked out well for us. We will not be coming back into the council chambers for any action post or executive sessions. At this time, we have an executive session on contract negotiations pursuant to 1 MRSA Section 405. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Councilor McLeod, second by Councilor Walker. All those in favor? We now stand in executive session by a vote of 6-0.